Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My friends, thanks for being here. I recognize a few faces, some old friends, some from last week when I was here. I want to start with success. There turns out to be a surprising relationship between happiness and success. When I was growing up in Singapore, right here in Singapore, I'm Asian. And I was growing up, it was drilled into my thick skull that the relationship between happiness and success is this, which is someday when I become successful, I'll be happy. Therefore, for now, just suffer. Work hard, study hard, suffer. Someday, when you're successful, then you'll be happy. Yay. Turns out it didn't quite work that way. Right? It turns out I have a lot of friends who I'm sure you all do as well. I have friends who are very successful but miserable. And then I read the literature. Turns out this has been researched for a while. And the studies show that success leads to happiness in only one situation. One and only one situation, which is escape from poverty. Right? So if you're poor, and then you go from poor to not poor, so going from poor to middle class, where you don't have to worry about food or clothing or shelter and so on. You go from poor to not poor, there's a huge difference in happiness level. If you go from go from not poor to rich, so going from middle class to rich, some difference, not that much difference. If you go from rich to very rich, even less difference. Why? It turns out there's a very simple explanation. Because we only have one body each, right? Then it's like there's a limit to how much we can consume. Right? It's like a $2 hamburger versus $100 caviar. Is there a difference? Yeah, some difference. Not that much difference. $100 caviar, $1,000 caviar. Not that much difference, right? So there's kind of an asymptotic peak. So a lot of my friends, when they grow up, they make sacrifices, they become successful, and then they find that they started peaking, and they keep getting more money, but they're not happier. And in fact, they're miserable. It turns out that the reverse is true, which is that it turns out that happiness leads to success. And that's fascinating. And there's even a word for it. The word is the happiness advantage, which is that, for example, which is that happiness brings about is conducive to success. For example, it turns out that if you're happy, you are 37% more effective in sales. And retroactively, it makes sense, right? If you think about it, if the two guys, same price, same product, so everything equal, one guy, you see him is always happy, the other guy you see him is always grumpy. Who do you buy from? Buy from the first guy, 37% more of the time, right? So it's been quantified. The fact it's been quantified was fascinating. The other quality is, for example, optimism, which relates to joy, happiness. This was an early study from Marty Seligman, who is a famous pioneer in positive psychology. And this was the study that made him famous. So the study was that there was a lot of turnover in insurance agents, in MetLife. So in order to become an insurance agent, you have to take a test, right? And then if you pass the test, then you get a job. So there are people who just failed the test, and Marty convinced MetLife to hire those people among those people who score high in optimism. And those will turn out to outperform those who pass the test by a factor of 50%. That's fascinating. Happiness also causes you to be more productive, according to studies, by about 30%. It causes you to be more accurate on your work by about 19%. It also correlates with good health. It correlates with popularity, which is not surprising. Right? Again, same thing. Your friend who's always grumpy, your friend you're always happy. Who do you want to hang out with? The happy guy. Right? So, and of course, popularity also feeds back to success. If everybody loves you, long term, they want to help you. They want to work with you. So you're more successful. So this is the relationship. Happiness doesn't cause, success doesn't necessarily bring about happiness, but in general, happiness does bring about success. So it makes sense to learn to be happy. And because of everything I just said, by the way, will be totally useless if it turns out that happiness is something that we cannot do anything about. You're born miserable or you're born happy, and you're born miserable, then sorry lah, sucks to be you. If that's the case, everything that I just said, not just a waste of time, it's also very discouraging. So, but I'm not happy, so I'm be successful, right? Turns out, one of the most important things I ever learned in my life is that happiness is highly trainable. And the way happiness is trainable, I'm going to say away so I can move. The way happiness is trainable is through joy. So first, what's the difference? For happiness, I'm using the definition by Matthew Ricard, who is known as the happiest man in the world. And he wrote a whole book about happiness. And in his book, he defined happiness like this. Happiness is defined as a deep flourishing, a deep sense of flourishing that comes from an exceptionally healthy mind, not a mood, not a fleeting feeling, not an emotion, but an optimal state of being. So that is happiness. In contrast, joy is moment to moment. Joy is an emotion. Joy is fleeting. So it's a moment-to-moment pleasant emotion. So the relationship between the two, happiness is something you take, it's kind of like integral, something you integrate over time. But for example, you say you have a happy day. Doesn't mean that every moment is nice. There's some moments which are not so nice. Right? For example, you kind of miss your first train. You have to wait 3 minutes for the next train. Right? It's kind of annoying. Then you were just having lunch, minding your own business, and your friend forced you to come here. Right? Listen to me. Things like that, right? And then at the end of the day, you think about, today's a happy day, right? As a whole. So it's taken as a whole. In contrast, joy is moment to moment. This moment I'm joyful, this moment I'm not. And the relationship is that, therefore, happiness doesn't mean that every moment is joyful. A happy life doesn't mean that every moment in the life is joyful. However, there is no such thing as joyless happiness. Therefore, joy is the building block of happiness. Therefore, if you train to access joy, then you can build happiness. And it turns out access to joy is highly trainable. And that was, to me, that was the mind-blowing part. You can train to access joy on demand, right? With sufficient training, you can find it anytime. At any moment. Joy. Question is how? Turns out there are very easy steps to do it, and there are 3 steps to do this. The first step is easing into joy. And when it comes to easing, the idea is to rest the mind. Come on in, just sit over here. Yes, we were a little bit worried that there were not enough people coming, so we didn't have too many chairs. Now we need more chairs, yeah. I can say that because I'm the chairman. Where was I? Okay, easing. So easing is about resting the mind. And then when the mind is at rest, joy may arise. And with enough training, it becomes reliable. When the mind is at ease, joy will arise. And when the joy arises, you use the joy to reinforce the ease, because a joyful mind is a mind at ease. That's easy to settle. And then using the ease again to reinforce the joy. And it becomes a very powerful virtuous cycle. Shall we do a short experiment? This one only takes 5 seconds. So if you don't like it, it's okay. 5 seconds is over. For 5 seconds, I want to do this. I want to bring full attention to one breath. Here's the instruction. Total but gentle attention to one breath. One in breath, one out breath. And you're done. Sounds good? Okay, beginning now. Thank you. How many of you, after that one breath, find that you're a little bit calmer, a little bit more relaxed than before the breath? Let's do a show of hands. Good. Almost everybody. Question, why is it so powerful? It's only one breath. How does one breath already have an impact? There are two reasons. One's physiological, one psychological. The physiological reason is that when you bring attention to one breath, do you notice that you're breathing slower and deeper? And when you did that, you're stimulating your vagus nerve. And when you stimulate the vagus nerve, you're activating something called the relaxation response. And when you do that, the relaxation response is the direct opposite of the stress response. So therefore, in the first breath, already your blood pressure is going down, your heart rate is going down, and your muscles are loosening, less tense. So already in one breath, you can feel the difference. That is the physiological effect. There's another effect which is even more powerful, and that's a psychological effect. Psychologically, to be regretful, you need to be in the past. To worry, you need to be in the future. When you bring total attention to one breath, for the duration of one breath, you are in the present, totally in the present. And because you're totally in the present, you are not in the past and not in the future. And therefore, you are free from worry and regret. Freedom from worry and regret, even for the duration of one breath. That alone makes a difference, right? I think a lot of you are let me see, probably 100% of you are high achievers, right? And some percentage of you are people in responsibility. So my guess is that roughly 100% of you are carrying worry and regret all day, every day. And in this one breath, you get to release that load, even for just one breath. Then you bring it back up, of course. But that one breath allows you to recover, allows you to rest. So if you can do this, we can sustain this for more than one breath, 3 breaths, you get 15 seconds of rest. Right? And then you can do it for more than that, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then your body and mind gets to rest. And that is how you get ease. And then in that ease, you find joy, right? Because the mind is free from worry and regret, and there's a joyful quality to this. So one question is that comes out from that is how powerful can this be? Right? I mean, take a moment. Okay, I'm a little bit better. Get back to work. Nothing changed. How powerful is this? It turns out to be a lot more powerful than even I expected. A long time ago, I read this research on tennis players. So these are the best tennis players in the world, those who win the Grand Slams. The question is, what distinguishes them? And the quality that distinguishes them was very surprising. It is their ability to rest body and mind between points. So between points at 10 to 15 seconds. And then they are able to use the technique you just learned, but they master it. So they can rest body and mind so that by the end of 10 to 15 seconds, they are more rested than before. And because of that, they can sustain high performance over and over again, which is how they win the Grand Slams. It was fascinating. So I read that, I was fascinated, but I couldn't really write it in the book because I haven't actually met a world-class tennis player, so I couldn't verify it. And then one fine day, I met this guy, and his name is Novak. And Novak is, I don't know, the best player in the history of the game or something. So I met him, we went through our initial courtesies, and then immediately the first question I asked him was this. I told him I just told you. And I said, is it true? And Novak said, yes, it's true. And he says, at my level, tennis is no longer a physical game. Tennis is a mental game. And the secret to winning is the ability to stay calm and clear all the time. So this skill is a very simple skill, but the implications, at least for success, is broad. It's very broad and very deep, right? It can make you the best tennis player in the world. Not just that, it's also even for office workers. It's obvious what it can do for you. And another thing it does for you is this faculty is a faculty of leadership. One important part of leadership is the ability to think under fire, right? Especially in the military. In the military and in the police force, literally under fire. But in this case, figurative under fire, in a crisis, if all your colleagues all your co-workers are panicking and you alone can think clearly, then you are the leader. Right? Everybody looks at you and say, "Wow, that guy Clinton, can be." This guy. right? And this turns out, I mean, some of us are born with this, but it turns out this is a trainable skill. And the training comes from this, comes from the ability to calm the mind on demand. In addition, I think the biggest impact of this is the consequence of, it has to do with joy. When you're able to bring the mind to a state that's calm and clear, and you do it on demand, you may find, or in my case, reliably, I find that I'm joyful, happy. And there was a time where even once I got access reliably. So that means that every time I sit in meditation, within 2 or 3 seconds, I can get that joy. I didn't know why. It made no sense to me. Why would a calm and clear mind always be joyful? So I asked around. One of my teachers gave me a brilliant answer. And he says it's very simple. Joy is the default state of mind. Therefore, when your mind is calm and clear, it returns to default. And that's joy. Simple as that. No magic, no mystery. I was like, holy. Right? That was a life-changing insight. And specifically, so later on, I read up on the theory behind it. Specifically, there is a quality of mind, and the technical term in the Pali language is sukha, S-U-K-H-A. Sukha is a quality of mind that is defined as quiet joy, non-energetic joy, joy that doesn't require energy. And it has two characteristics because it doesn't require energy. And I compare it to the hum of the air conditioning in the room. The hum is always there, but normally you don't notice. The only way to notice the hum is to quiet down and pay attention. And once you hear that, you find it's always there, and always been there, and always will be there. Very annoying. Sukha is the same. It's a quality of mind that's always there, always been there. So the first thing about non-energetic joy, non-energetic means it's very subtle. Because it's very subtle, the only way to access it is quiet down and pay attention. Second characteristic, because it's non-energetic, is extremely sustainable. Once you learn to access it, you find it is always there. It's always there for you. And then you have a reliable source of joy to, to bringing something water from the well. Anyway, to benefit from any time of day, any day, right? And that is life-changing because we go through life thinking we need to pursue happiness. And it's even in the American Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. And then when we go through this, we realize that happiness is not something we need to pursue. Happiness is already there. It's something we just have to allow. And once you can access it, we are free. We have freedom. We are free from being bonded by what we have to do to become happy, because we're already happy. So now we can do what is the right thing. So that changed my life. And that is only step 1. But wait, there's more. If you buy now, you got 2 more steps for $19.99 plus shipping and handling. There's another effect on that, by the way, which is it raises baseline happiness. So for me, my life, my own experience is, let me check my time. My own experience is, when I was young, I was miserable. Right? I think it was genetics. Genetically, I was born with a low baseline, low happiness baseline. And I'm one of those people who, when the angel looked at my charts before I was born, said, oh, sucks to be you, sorry. Goodbye, bro. And so the way I experience it is that if nothing happens, I was miserable. And then something good had to happen for me to not be miserable, but it only lasts a short while, a couple of days or whatever, a couple of hours. And then I'm back to being miserable. I'm always miserable. And a couple of years later, I discovered I'm the reverse. I discovered I'm always happy. My baseline happiness shifted. Nothing happens, I'm jolly. In fact, I became the jolly good fellow. Right? It's fascinating. And what changed? What changed was this, was finding sukha, getting reliable access to it, and then eventually my happiness baseline just kept moving up and up. And before I knew it, it crept up all the way from one side of the spectrum to the other side. But anyway, that's only step 1. Step 2 is inclining the mind toward joy. So what does that mean? The word inclining here refers to mental inclination, changing mental inclination. So in the old text, in the ancient scriptures, mental inclination is compared to the slope of a mountain. When a mountain is sloped in a certain way, when water flows, it flows effortlessly in the direction. Right? Same thing with the mind. If the mind is inclined towards a certain way, mental experiences flow effortlessly towards the direction. For example, if I incline towards anger, every other thing makes you angry, effortlessly. Right? But if your mind is inclined towards joy, every other thing makes you joyful. The question is, first question is it possible to change inclination of mind? Turns out it's yes. And then the next question is how? Like if yes, how? Turns out, again, one of the surprises for me was that the methodology is actually very, very simple. One of the most effective ways, and simplest and most powerful ways, is to notice thin slices of joy. That is all. So what does that mean? In life, day-to-day life, moment-to-moment life, you notice that thin slices of joy everywhere, all the time. For example, when I'm thirsty, I drink water. That was nice, right? I just experienced a thin slice of joy. It was thin in two dimensions. The first is thin spatially. So it wasn't like, yeah, it was like, eh, right? And second, it lasted only 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. Didn't last that long. And because they're so thin, we miss them all the time. Right? We miss them all the time. And therefore, we look back at our life on our day and say, oh, this day are miserable, no joy at all. Because we didn't see all these things. What if we see that? So let's say we play a game, right? We play a game, let's say we count number of blue cards. And those who count the highest number of blue cards in 1 week wins a prize. I give you a prize. So, okay, what's the prize? At first, I was going to give you a bell. But then I think to myself, no bell, please. So you win a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, it was very funny when I said it in front of a Nobel Peace Prize winner. She thought it was very funny. Anyway, we play the game. What will happen after that? You find that if you play the game, you find that you start noticing blue cars, 1 car, 2 cars, and then you find that they're everywhere. Every time you traffic, you see blue cars everywhere. Never noticed them before. Same thing here. When you start noticing thin slices of joy, you start to find it everywhere. Every drink of water, there's a thin slice of joy. Every meal, at least the very first bite. Oh, delicious, thin slice of joy. You meet an old friend, that's a thin slice of joy. A new friend, okay, thin slice of joy, right? Even simple things like walking without pain, seeing, right, the beautiful sight. You notice I was standing there when you came in, looking at the sight. I mean, I've been here many times, but still, thin slice of joy. So can I assign homework, by the way? This is a homework, okay? Homework allow you to notice thin slices of joy in daily life. When you're eating, the very first bite. First bite is the most delicious, right? So at the very first bite, bring full attention to the joy of taste. Okay, sounds good? When you meet every time you see a friend, bring 1 moment of attention to the joy of seeing a friend. When you have a shower, the first contact of water, 1 moment of joy. When drinking water, 1 moment of joy. Can you do that? Do that, see what happens. If you do it for a few days, I guarantee you'll change your life. You'll be happier. So the first effect of that is that you find more joy. Like your joy doubles. Nothing changes. Your life remains exactly the same. Your joy doubles already just by noticing. However, there is another effect which is even more powerful if you do this, which is familiarization. When the mind starts to see joy a lot, the mind becomes familiar with joy. And the word familiar is closely related to the word family. So joy becomes a member of family. Somebody who is always there for you, somebody you can always count on. And then, because of that, joy becomes the inclination of mind. And once inclined, every other experience is joyful. Right? Fascinating, right? Doesn't take extra time, not that hard to do. And that's step 2. Step 3 is uplifting the mind. Uplifting the mind specifically with goodness. Let's see, shall we try another experiment? Okay, this one twice as long as the previous one. This one 10 seconds. For 10 seconds, I like you to do this. I like you to secretly identify 2 people in this room. And then secretly think, I wish for that person to be happy, and I wish for that person to be happy. Just think. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't go like, oh. Not HR safe. Just think. This is an entirely thinking exercise. Sounds good? Okay, 10 seconds beginning now. And thank you for your attention. Anybody notice that when you're doing this, you're smiling? Right? You notice that when you're doing this, you're happy, you're joyful? If that's true, you may have, and I would say you may have just discovered one of the most important secrets of happiness. To be on the giving end of a kind thought is intrinsically rewarding. Therefore, all you have to do is bring up a thought. I wish for that guy to be happy. That alone makes you a little bit happier. If you do that a lot, it makes you much happier. How powerful is this? Right? How far can you scale this? I was once giving a talk on a Monday evening. And then I assigned, so we did this exercise. Oh, can I assign homework, by the way? Again, second homework? Okay. I'll tell you what I did, and then this is the homework. The homework is this. During a work day, every hour, spend 10 seconds on the hour. Every hour, spend 10 seconds wishing for 2 people outside your cubicle, outside office, wish them to be happy in your head. It's so not embarrassing, right? Because they don't know what you're thinking. As long as you don't go like, then it's a bit embarrassing. Right? They think you're weird. Unless you're in Google, then you're not so weird. Nah, that's kidding. But just thinking, right? And then nobody knows what you're thinking, then go back to work. See what happens. Shall we try that? At least tomorrow? Okay. So I assigned this homework on a Monday, in the audience about twice his size. I assigned a homework. And then that was a Monday evening. Wednesday morning, I received an email from a total stranger. And this person said, I hate my job. I hate coming to work every single day. But I did the homework on Tuesday. And Tuesday was my happiest day in 7 years. Happiest day in 7 years. What did it take? It took 80 seconds of thinking. Fascinating. One of the important things about this thinking is that this is easier than the other exercises, I think. Why? Because the other exercises, like resting the mind, right? It kind of needs a little bit of practice to rest. Because there are people who cannot rest, like they have to practice, right? Inclining the mind, again, kind of takes a little bit of practice. Like you can do it over 1 or 2 days, and it starts to get the groove. But this exercise, loving kindness, like to be on the giving end of a kind thought, all it takes is the arising of a thought. And of every single adult I've ever known in my life, every adult knows how to bring up a thought. And bringing up a thought is the simplest thing any adult can do. Everybody think of an elephant. Everybody can do that, easily, effortlessly. So therefore, if all it takes to have an injection of joy is to bring up a thought, it can't get easier than that. Right? So by the way, this is so powerful. I would say that if you don't remember a single thing in this lecture, or rather, you really remember one thing from this lecture, remember how good looking I am. If you remember 2 things in this lecture, remember this. I'm just kidding. Remember this. Remember only one thing in this lecture, remember this exercise. Wishing for others to be happy in your head. This alone guarantees increase in happiness at no cost. So if you do this, this is it, the 3 steps. If you do this over time, practicing over time, 3 things happen. The first thing that happens is that joyful experiences in your life gets even more joyful. And by now it's obvious why, right? Because you've been paying attention to it. Like previously eating food is like, it's kind of nice. But now it's like, oh, this is delicious, right? Even for one moment, like you double your joy at no cost whatsoever. No extra cost whatsoever. So that's the first effect. Joyful experience become even more joyful. The second effect is that neutral experiences become joyful experiences. More and more so, increasingly so. Why? Because you stop taking them for granted. Right? So it's like suddenly simple things like having access to water. At first it's kind of neutral, water, whatever, right? But now it's like, oh my God, this is so valuable. So many people in the world have no access to water. I have it. Right? And then it goes to something else. You start to find joy in the absence of pain. It's like to be free from pain is so joyful. Right? When I have a toothache, I tell myself, if I don't have this toothache, I'll be so happy. And then I went to see a dentist, this thing went away, and then 3 days later, I forget to be happy. What if I never forget to be happy? This moment, right here, right now, I'm not in pain. This moment, I can walk. Not just I can walk without pain. Freedom from pain. Such a valuable, beautiful experience. Suddenly, you stop taking it for granted. And that's how what was originally we thought to be neutral become joyful. And I think one of the key words is gratefulness. We start becoming grateful for everything. And there's a Mayan practice I just learned last week. The old Mayan practice is to wake up every day, say thank you 400 times. So a Mayan practitioner, the moment she wakes up, she breathes in air and she says thank you, air. She sees the ground, thank you, ground. Generally thank everything 400 times a day. That's the key to happiness. And these skills you learn will naturally, effortlessly bring you there. So that's the second effect. The third effect, I think, even more powerful than the first two, which is that painful experiences become manageable. Why so? The first reason is that all the skills you learn to increase joy turns out to also, you can apply directly to dealing with pain. For example, in a difficult situation, emotionally difficult, you can learn to calm the mind on demand. You can calm the mind, already half the problem gets solved on the spot. Right? That's one. So everything we learn is directly applicable. More than that, which is a very powerful effect, which I kind of discovered by accident. And when I did, I thought I was going crazy. I discovered that I was able to access joy in the midst of great pain. So I was going through a prolonged episode of pain, emotional pain. And I found that at least once a day, so a couple of times a day, I felt joyful. Unadulterated joy. Like yeah, kind of joy, right? From nothing. I was just walking around, eating my food, meeting friends, saying hi to friends, hey, hi Clinton, hey, things like that. Suddenly, I just became very joyful. And I was like, wait a minute. There was like one moment I was so miserable I want to die. And then suddenly I have joy, lasting for about 5 minutes. And then I'm so miserable I want to die. I thought I was going crazy, more than before. More than usual. What happened? I learned something. I learned that joy and pain are not mutually soluble. They can displace each other. So if one is much bigger than the other, if there's a lot of joy but little pain, the joy displaces the pain, vice versa. But if they're equally strong, they do not dissolve each other. They exist side by side. And the person I learned most of this from, is this woman called Rigoberta Menchú. Rigoberta is Mayan, so the foreign thank yous I learned from her as well. Rigoberta, she's a Mayan woman. She's the first Mayan ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And by the way, anybody here met a Nobel Peace Prize winner before? Okay, I met a few. There's a stereotype, right? The stereotype is if you need, the guy won the Nobel Peace Prize, he must be nice, right? So if you see this person, you expect he or her to be warm and say, hey, how are you doing? To be nice to you and so on and so forth, right? Rigoberta fits the stereotype to a T. Right? You meet her even at a distance, even with the language barrier. She speaks Spanish, to go to interpreter half the time. even with that, you see her immediately, you can feel her goodness. Right? And then you ask for, and then she sees you, say, hey, and then you ask for a hug. Yeah, of course, of course. And she's always happy, she's always nice. And then I spent an hour with her. And within 1 hour, I realized that there's something below the surface, that she has a lot of pain, huge amount of pain. Her pain comes from her life traumas. Right? Her father was burned alive by the government. Her mom was kidnapped, tortured, raped, murdered, and her body was left on the side of the street to feed the wild animals. Right? She lost her brother in a similar way. She lost her son. And it's like any one of these events in a life is traumatic, change a person's life, right? If I have any one of these things, I will be bitter, I'll be angry, I'll be revengeful, or I will withdraw. I don't want to do anything in this world. Right? I mean, look at Rigoberta. She didn't do any of those things. She's still joyful, like genuinely joyful, even despite her pain. She's still serving the world. She came to Singapore last week on our invitation to speak to young people, to inspire young people. She came all the way here for 40 hours and flew back just to speak to 200 young people. And she's still working. And then she's going back to fight for human rights. This amazing woman. The question I had for her, how do you do this? And then I realized what happened. So the way she did it was, I mean, my own explanation of it, not her exact words. My own explanation is she's using joy as a container for her pain. And the analogy I use is like having a fracture. Right? If you have a very bad fracture, you break your leg, what do? You put a cast around it. And if you cast around it, what does it do? It does two things. First, it limits further damage. And secondly, it allows time to heal, allows healing to happen. And she's doing the same thing. She's using her joy, her genuine joy, as a container for her pain. So her pain doesn't cause more damage, and she can heal in the meantime. And that was fascinating. And my own experience dealing with pain, in joy and pain, is I feel that my joy is like an oasis. I feel I was traversing a vast desert. And every moment of joy is like an oasis. And without the oasis, I was not able to navigate the desert. But with the oasis, I went from one end to the other end, and I recovered. So this ability to access joy, in addition to a happy life, it gives you resilience. It gives you resilience in the worst circumstances. So this is what the practice does for you. I wrote this book, Joy on Demand. Let me see. I wrote this book. One of my main goals is to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. I mean, that is my goal in life, create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. And this book is one of the data points towards this. And the way I want this book to contribute is I like it so this book is about joy, ostensibly. However, it's also about two related qualities. It's about inner peace, inner joy, compassion. Right? I think that the trigger point for world peace is global compassion. However, compassion has to be sustained by inner joy. Inner joy has to be sustained by inner peace. So all three come together as a package. So by writing a book on joy and with practices that actually work, that people can actually do because they're easy, I'm hoping that people will practice this, and in doing that, they'll be joyful, and they'll also have inner peace, and they also have compassion. And through that, I hope I'm helping to make inner peace, inner joy, and compassion understandable, accessible, and most importantly, practicable. And through doing that, I hope that everybody will practice this. I hope everybody in this room will do that, and together, we'll create the conditions for world peace in our lifetime. Thank you.
I have a question. At Google, we talk about scale and impact a lot as we think about products. Is there a way that we can combine our own kind of internal philosophy on how we roll out our products and world peace? How can that come together?
I think so. It's not entirely clear what the direct impact is, but my thinking is, at least when I was growing up in Google, I think it's still true now, but at least when I was growing up in Google, we care a lot about user experience and also about our goodness, right? Our prime directive, I think, still is don't be evil, right? That's our prime directive. When I was working in Google, every meeting, every other meeting, every meeting we think about the issue. Every decision we make is this evil? And then every now and then somebody will raise a question, but wait, is this evil? Right? So we really care about this. And so that's half of it. The other half of it is serve the user. Do whatever it takes to give the user the best benefit. And so if we combine these two together, and if we also personally practice peace, joy, compassion, those qualities will bleed into this decision process. Because consciously or unconsciously, we say, not just is it the users using the product well, I mean, in the product serving the user, but is it also promoting compassion? And so I'm hoping through that, continuing doing good as a corporate philosophy, and for each one of us to infuse and practice peace, joy, compassion, I think that will scale our impact.
Thank you for sharing with us. And you've talked a lot about how we can seek happiness. What about for those people who are just eternally miserable? How do we take this third wisdom and impart that happiness to people who are not really seeking for happiness or who didn't know that this is what it means?
So instead of learning first, how do you get it to other people? It's very hard, especially a parent or a child. Yeah, those are the hardest, right? Yeah. So a couple answers. One answer is I don't really know any other way to do it except through example. So living that life, especially in my case, because I used to be miserable. And then if people know my history, they say, hey, why are you so happy nowadays? What changed? Right? But even despite that, if you're always happy, you're always kind to people, and you're successful and so on, somebody will come to you one day and say, hey, what is your secret? And you can tell them, oh, this is my secret. So by example, that's the main one. In addition to by example, there's one other point I want to make, which has to do with batting averages. So this comes from this question, like, all the practices we talk about, like compassion, kindness, does it make a difference in social relationship? Does it make us less conflicting? Right? So if you have a friend, maybe somebody that causes you a lot of trouble all the time, does it make that happen less? The real answer is we can't control it, but the practice will make a significant difference. And here's the analogy. Analogy is in baseball, there's something called the batting average, which is roughly, for those who don't know about baseball, roughly the percentage of time that the batter hit the ball when he's supposed to. So the batting average of a major league player in baseball is about 0.28, roughly. So about 28% of the time. Babe Ruth is about 34.34. Right? So about 6 percentage point difference between the average player and the best player in the history of the game. So if you look at those numbers, two or three things came out. The first thing that comes out is that even the best player in the history of the game hits the ball less than half the time, minority of the time. And even for a major league player, even less. And the second thing you discover is that the difference between the best and the average is very small, 6 percentage points or something. So those 6 percentage points makes a meaningful difference. And it's the same with our daily life, right? If we interact with people, we have this amount of problem. But if I practice kindness and compassion, the probability of us having a better conversation increases meaningfully. It may be small. Maybe it goes from 25% of time to 33% time, maybe, something like that. But still, the increase is significant enough to make a deep, meaningful difference. Like the one time that is a good interaction, maybe the one time the person likes you and he's your future father-in-law or something. Right? So they make a difference. So therefore, what this means is when you're practicing kindness, compassion, peace, joy, first, if you don't get the intended result from other people, don't feel bad. It's expected. And trust that it does make a difference. Small but meaningful difference, and sometimes meaningful enough to be life-changing. Thank you.
And you can buy it in the book too.
Yes, you can buy the book too.
We have time for about 2 questions.
Thanks.
The question is, does the principle of diminishing marginal utility that's applicable on pleasure also applicable on joy, whereby we need more dosage of joy over time?
As far as I know, the answer is no. And I tell you why. The number one reason why consumption, so the joy that's based on sense and ego pleasure, the number one reason they don't scale over time is habituation. Right? So if you have a lot of stuff, then after a while, to get the same happiness, you need more stuff. Right? If you have a promotion to director, 3-6 months later, this sucks, I'm not VP. Right? Right? To the same level of happiness, you need to be VP. Right? So it's because we habituate. The inner joy that I find, my discovery, and I could be wrong, but my own experience and my experience talking to other people who had a similar experience, is that we don't habituate. And because we don't habituate, the joy is always there. It's always positive. So that is why it doesn't, what's the original word you use? Marginal, yeah, doesn't diminish over time. There was a fascinating study, not to confirm it, but it's a data point that blew my mind. And this study was on this idea called jhana, and it's a practice called jhana. So remember I was talking about ease and joy, when they calm the mind, they become joyful. So jhana is the extreme version of that. So this is when your attention is so stable, it doesn't leave the object of choice, let's say the breath, for at least 1 hour for an amateur, at least for master, at least 4 hours, 4 to 24 hours. It don't leave, attention doesn't waver, and because it doesn't waver, the mind is full of joy, like unadulterated joy. The description given by the masters is this is better than sex. That much joy. So, somebody has studied it, right? There was one and only one study I know of, done on a master, and it was fascinating. So the study, among other things, tested that hypothesis, that claim. The claim is better than sex, right? So how do you test that claim? The way it was done, maybe it came out wrong. The way measurement was done was on the dopamine release system, testing the activity on the dopamine system. So the hypothesis, or rather the prediction, is that if it's better than sex, you might find hyperdrive in that, right, dopamine. And then if that's true, by the way, if it's true, then we have a problem because it's subject to habituation. Like everything else that depends on dopamine overdrive. So the test was done on this guy. One master was willing to go through fMRI and everything. And the surprise was, at the time he reported, this happiness is so intense, it's better than sex. His activation of dopamine was very slight. It was like kind of nice, according to the dopamine. But yet he says it's so joyful. Why? Because his neocortical activity was very low. So in other words, his mind and his brain was quiet. And because his mind was quiet, he perceived that little bit of joy as huge. And so therefore, that gives me confidence. Because of the mechanism, therefore, it's not subject to habituation. Because there's no overdrive of the dopamine system. And so therefore, this type of joy is extremely sustainable. Thank you. Yes, maybe last look. I'll try to answer quickly.
Thank you very much for sharing with us a lot of very practical tips on basically how we can explore joy and how we can use it to drive sort of more sustained happiness. In the very beginning, you mentioned also the link between happiness and the success and the productivity. So how can we learn more about this one? Because I guess, especially for an overachiever kind of personality, this may be the least intuitive point. Because maybe kind of experiencing joy kind of frequently in our life can indeed drive us to be more happy on average, happier. but how does it really connect actually to achieving the goals? Because the process may not be necessarily pleasant.
Yes, two ways to do that. Academic way and direct way. Academic way, there's a book I recommend, The Happiness Advantage. It talks about the research that's been done. And then if after you read the book, you can go through the bibliography to look at the papers. The practical way is to read Joy on Demand, try out the techniques, and see if it actually makes a difference. Oh, the whole out like Banner White. And see if it actually makes a difference to you. So these are the two methods. Okay, last question.
So I was really curious in particular about finding the inner quietness and thinking about that. I started meditation about about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I'm still trying to figure out how do you find inner quietness when you're an anxious person who has you tell you to take a deep breath, and then after a while your mind is thinking on the next thing, and you're basically almost having ADHD.
Okay, I just give you a short answer because we're out of time. The short answer is meditation is not what you think. So we have this idea that meditation is about quieting the mind, no thoughts. And then when there's a thought, I'm a failure, I suck at this. Right? That's the pattern. And then not just that, the thought becomes louder and louder. You suck, you should just stop. Right? So the key is to know that that is not true. That meditation is not about quieting thoughts. I mean, if you do it eventually, the thoughts quiet by themselves. In the meantime, the practice is about attending. It's about attention. It's not about quieting. It's not about object. It's not about sensation. It's about attention. And specifically, bringing attention to an object, let's say the breath or the body, whatever it is. And if it wanders away, just bring it back. So it's attention. Every time you bring it back, it's not a failure. It's like holding one bicycle, right? If you only have a heavy object, you wouldn't grow. But if you do this, you will grow. Same thing. When your attention wanders away, bring it back. It's like you're doing this. Then your muscles, specifically your prefrontal cortex, will grow. So every time attention wanders away is an opportunity for growth. So that's the first thing, recognizing that. The second thing is recognizing that you don't have to suppress the thoughts. The thoughts can just be there. And all you have to do, your only job is to pay attention to the breath, regardless of the thoughts. So they just flow, yeah, whatever. But just looking at this, that's all. Okay, with that, thank you very much.